Welcome. Welcome to my Grace Talk for the month of July, Commitment to Transformation. Commitment to Transformation. The month of July, the Centers for Spiritual Living is revisiting spiritual principles to use them as a launching pad for a fuller expression of the evolutionary vision of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And I want to quote the vision that they have. It says, "We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world in which each and every person discovers their own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone." Amen to that. Yes, can we vision that? Can we commit to a vision like that? Recently, I talked about how we can be pulled forward by the recognition of our inherent freedom. The choices that we make all the time can free us or can bind us. And we have an opportunity now, especially after this past year of the pandemic, we have an opportunity now to revision, refine, redefine, and recommit to something new, something greater, right? We can move from feeling and being a victim to a victor. We can explore more deeply how living from a higher consciousness and state of awareness will advance us to a better experience of freedom. Commitment to transformation. How about commitment to spiritual transformation? Because that's really where it all starts. Think about the word commitment. Is that a scary word for anybody? Yeah, it can be. And the definition in the dictionary of commitment is a pledge, promise, obligation, dedication, or allegiance to something. So Reverend Michael Beckwith, in his book Spiritual Liberation, has a great comment about commitment. And he says commitment is the hallmark of freedom. Be honest, fess up. The ego in each of us tries to convince us that we are more spiritually awake than we actually are. Spiritual arrogance is deceptive. It comes about in part by the seduction of spiritual paths that have guaranteed us instant enlightenment, or techniques that enable us to meditate like a Buddhist monk in just 20 minutes. The ego, he says, loves hearing that the path of transformation doesn't have to be challenging. The ego really likes to hear that. I mean, who doesn't like hearing that we need only believe and not do any inner work to become spiritually awake? Oh, yeah. The inspiration of words is easier to accommodate than the perspiration of practice. The perspiration of practice, yeah. After all, affirming that you are part and parcel of God does not require the same discipline as what it takes to realize your God consciousness. It takes practice. It takes practice. He says we don't want to become spiritual junkies running from one seminar to another, quoting our teachers, but practicing nothing. Right. There's something about taking the time to go deep in our spiritual work. Going on pilgrimages to exotic power spots can inspire us, but they can't take the place, he says, of the simple commitment to take a seat under the Bodhi tree of our own consciousness and face the sometimes boring and sometimes blissful meditation practices, or prayer time, or just quiet time. He says, plenty are the excuses we make for not committing to do what it takes to awaken our inner enlightened state of being. You know, I think about that. How many times a day do we check our phones or our devices? A lot. And how many times a day do we check in to our inner source? How many times a day do we just pause and say, thank you, life. I'm so blessed. That's the beginning of a spiritual practice right there. He says, wise commitments do not bind us, they free us. Hear that. A commitment frees us. To the spiritually immature, commitment is a scary word because it's internalized as bondage. But to the spiritually mature, commitment is the equivalent of freedom because it bestows authentic happiness that cannot be taken away. When you make an unconditional commitment to your spiritual practice, whatever that is, the energy response from the universe matches you at the point of your commitment. We say here in the Science of Mind, God's got your back. The divinity has your back, right? So are you willing to commit to your spiritual transformation? Are you willing to trust that which already made you perfect to manifest itself as an even greater expression of life as you? If you said yes to that, then you might just be a spiritual warrior. Oh, a spiritual warrior. And Mark Nepo, one of my favorite authors, has something to say about that in his Book of Soul. So I invite you to consider this. When we speak of being a spiritual warrior, a concept referred to in many traditions, we're describing a journey of transformation that is steadfast in its adherence to both love and truth in the face of the constant storms that life on earth can generate. Have you ever been through a storm? The word war, as in warrior, traces back to the Indo-European root word, which means to confuse and mix up. War and the inevitable conflict it produces, both within and between us, stems from a state of confusion. Thus, a spiritual warrior is one devoted to the clearing of confusion, both inwardly and out in the world. Think about that. Have you ever been at war within yourself? We all have, right? And are you at war with something you're seeing out in the world? Are you fighting something? He says the word veteran refers to anyone having long experience or practice. It traces back to the root vet, which means to inspire or spiritually engage. These origins point to the relational call to carry our beasts of burden while staying engaged in an atmosphere of spirit. So while we're experiencing something, we can still stay engaged in spirit until we clear all confusion and establish enduring roots. This is the work of a spiritual warrior, a veteran of life itself, not just individually, but in community. Few things, he says, are more worthwhile to pursue. Yeah, a spiritual warrior, a peaceful warrior. So think about it. Can you say yes to committing to taking action or supporting a vision of a world that works for everyone, including you? There's a famous quote by W.H. Murray, who was a Scottish mountaineer in the late 40s, 50s who climbed Everest. And this quote that he said is absolutely perfect for what I'm talking about. Until one is committed, he says, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. It is this: the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves you. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issue from that decision, raising one's favor of all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no one could have dreamed would have come their way. Until one is committed, think about that. There's power. There is such power in making a commitment, isn't there? There's power in taking dominion. And the best place to start is now, right now, through committing to your daily spiritual practice is a great place to start. The founder of Science of Mind, Dr. Ernest Holmes, said, if one will sit in quiet contemplation of good as an inner experience, he will experience the good which he contemplates. I've also heard it said, if we don't go within, we go without. Yeah. And I invite you to notice your resistance to commitment, just to notice it. In The Power of the Subconscious Mind, Dr. Joseph Murray said, if you set up resistance in your mind to the flow of life through you, this emotional congestion will get snarled up in your subconscious mind and cause all kinds of negative conditions. Yeah. Bless our hearts. And then Ernest Holmes again says, true non-resistance is the surrender of every arrogant attitude of mind to good and good alone. Those who have made this surrender have found real peace of mind, happiness, and wholeness in the only place it can be found, which is within themselves. Think about it. Is your commitment greater than your resistance? Commitment to transformation. Commitment to transformation, and transformation is a change, isn't it? But all change doesn't produce transformation. I'm not talking about a superficial outer change. But to become something else, you have to shift your inner self, your inner vibration, your consciousness. True transformation changes the previous version of what was to something entirely new, something we may have had no idea could look like. Just as something within the caterpillar compels it to attach itself to a twig, spin its own cocoon, and then completely release its physical form and caterpillar identity to realize its butterfly identity and form. We have to shed sometimes. We have to shed. So I believe that vision pulls us and compels us to surrender our human identity, our idea of ourselves, and open us to a greater good, to a spiritual transformation. Vision pulls us ever closer to the divine's highest expression of itself as us, as us. As it says in the scriptures, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. When we commit to allowing life's highest vision of itself to be known in our individualized awareness, it will open us to a completely new idea, a whole new experience, and it leads us to a direct experience of the mind of the infinite, which is a part of our mind. Ah, so good. Say yes. Let's affirm together, I commit to the highest vision for my life. I commit to the highest vision for my life. Yeah. And I was thinking, you know how how you feel after you take a class in a spiritual center or online, or how you feel when you take a meditation, do a meditation, especially with a group, or get a prayer from a practitioner. You get so clear that you can't even remember what was bothering you. Oh, I love that. It really shifts things, doesn't it? I have an interesting thing about commitment. When I decided to become a spiritual practitioner, and I went in kicking and screaming, I have to tell you. I was like, nope, 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 don't want to do that training. Nope, 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 nope. And then something clicked, and it was like, no, okay, I'm in. I'm in, I commit. And I did this study for over 3 or 4 years of consciousness work. And when I finally took my written exam and my oral panels and passed, I was given a stole. And when that stole was put over my shoulders, something changed in me. Something shifted. And I didn't know where this was going to lead, my commitment to this practitionerhood, but I knew it was a calling. And when I put that stole on, it was so powerful. I felt 20 feet tall. I felt grounded at the same time. I'm so grateful that I made that commitment. And then a few years later, I was introduced to studying to be a minister. And I was like, no, 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 I don't want to go there. I don't want to be a minister. And again, something opened up, and I was pulled by a vision. So I studied another few years at the Emerson Theological Institute, and I graduated after passing my written exam and my oral panels. And when my minister stole was put on, I again felt that I was in the right place, exactly where I was supposed to be. Don't know what it's going to lead to, have no idea, but it is my calling. It is part of me now, and I am so blessed and grateful that I chose this path. Who would have thought a professional modern dancer back in the 80s is now an interfaith minister? Who would have thought? Commitment to transformation. So I invite you to think about starting a spiritual practice if you don't have one. And it could be something very simple. You know, stopping and thanking God a few times a day. Or in the morning, with my coaching clients, I give them what I call bookends. In the morning, they are in gratitude for the day. They open their arms and say, what do I want to express as me today? How can I serve? What creative genius will I be? And then you write down the first thought that comes to you and focus on being that day. Today's going to be a great day. And then at the end of the day, you journal about all the ways the divine expressed itself as you throughout your day. You write some gratitudes, successes, what went well today, and you give thanks. That's a start. Commitment to transformation. Are you in? Are you ready? Are you willing? It's up to you. But I guarantee you that when you commit to anything with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole spirit, it won't lead you wrong. Ah, yes. So commit to transformation and be free. Namaste.